Right. It is indeed day 11 of 31 days of horror Halloween. And we're still in the 1970s. And, let's talk about a guy by the name of Tobe Hooper. Tobe Hooper is a guy who will forever be known for making one film and one film only. That, of course, being the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Well, he went on to make a couple more movies. Probably the most famous non-Texas Chainsaw Massacre film he made, obviously being Poltergeist. But in between those two movies, he actually made quite a bit of films. And one of them, and this is the movie we're reviewing today, is called Eaten Alive, aka Death Trap. And it's actually an entertaining little grindhouse movie. In a way, it's actually kind of more exploitative and sort of grimmer and bleaker than the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which says a lot. Of course, it's not as good as Texas Chainsaw Massacre. It doesn't have the innovativeness. It doesn't have the entire exhaustive horror element to it. But it's still pretty good. It's more of a standard narrative and not just this pell-mell, everything falls apart motif that you saw in Texas Chainsaw. So it is more of a traditional arc. And for what it's worth, it's actually pretty entertaining. Not a great film by any stretch of the imagination, but nonetheless something you'll probably enjoy if you have a taste for, the darker and more abrasive stuff. So the general plot line here is actually quite similar to Motel Hell, which is one of the more popular Texas Chainsaw Massacre ripoffs. It's basically about this one dude, and he owns a hotel, and it's completely grimy and grungy, and you got hookers everywhere, and it's just the absolute worst combination of people come in there, including a pre-Freddy Krueger Robert Englund, who plays this dude who's the most abusive prostitute purchaser in Texas. And it's frequented by pimps and prostitutes and drug runners. And so, a lot of people here that are very unsavory, who, of course, following horror film morality 101, all need to die. And this time around, they die through a pretty ingenious plot mechanic. The owner of the hotel, for whatever reason, has a pet crocodile in the swimming pool. Now, why it's there, I don't know. Why no one's never noticed this before, really can't tell you. But it's there. And, of course, you can pretty much figure out, the plot for this one. Motel owner has crocodile in the swimming pool. People don't pay rent on time. Do the math. Now, it's not the most innovative or clever horror film, but what it lacks in originality, it makes up for just in pure, just dirtiness. I mean, it's one of those movies where, in the 1970s, there were so many horror films that just made you feel just so much rural grime and grunge. And I think, at least in that regard, this film actually does a better job of painting rural grossness than even Texas Chainsaw Massacre did. Everything just feels so dirty and unsanitary and unclean. You just want to take a mop to everything in this movie. And I think that it makes it more atmospheric. It gives a good ambiance. It's that feeling that, you're in a complete disgusting part of the country where nobody really cares and just touching stuff will give you diseases. And I'm one of those guys where I'm kind of a mild germaphobe. So seeing that stuff really just kind of makes me go, ugh. And this film capitalizes upon that. And it does a very, very good job of exploiting our desires to, not live in grossness. Well, I could have said that way better, but it's early in the morning, I don't care. So overall, it's very entertaining. Lots of really non-PC humor throughout. Some great scenes. Sort of the downside to it is the final denouement. The part where you have the kid running around trying to escape the alligator, and of course you have that great, poetic ending where the motel owner himself gets eaten by the crocodile. I mean, that part just seems really just kind of, forced and predictable. You kind of saw it coming, you're wedged into it. So that's some points off there. But beyond that, I mean, it's just an entertaining movie. I mean, it's not a great film. It's not even a great genre film. But for what it is, it's just really solid. There's way worse ways to, spend, an hour and a half. And if you haven't seen it, it's a good companion piece of Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And, if you're just looking for a really good, rural, out in the sticks, 1970s rural horror film, which apparently is its own subgenre. I mean, you're looking around, and it's true. Hills Have Eyes, Texas Chainsaw Massacre. It fits. This is probably one of the better ones that you'll find out there, because I've seen a lot in that domain, and there are some truly terrible ones. Daddy's Deadly Darling. I mean, stuff like that. Even the name alone tells you just how terrible it is. 3 on a meat hook. So yeah, this stuff is way better than all that. So there you go. Eaten Alive, aka Death Trap. You haven't seen it, it's probably worth a screening. Just to at least kind of expand your scope of the filmography of Mr. Tobe Hooper. So that's it. That's Eaten Alive. That's the 1970s, and now we begin to prepare to move into what many people consider to be the best era ever in the history of the horror film, the 1980s. And trust me, we've got some very, very interesting stuff ahead of us in this countdown.